cosmetics, cell phones, etc. I think even just daily sustenance where children are in exchange for sexual favors, receiving money to go towards school fees, maintaining the family. So these are other challenges that one has to consider. But we also need to understand and appreciate that there's a huge influence, and I'm bringing this, I may be digressing, but I think it's very relevant. If we look at the advent of technology, the exposure to the internet, and what children are sharing, with regard to sexting, sextorting, images going viral, downloading, the reality is that sex is actually exaggerated. It's sex-exaggerated. The messaging, the subliminal messaging is that you are missing out if you do not try this. And children are not informed of the consequences thereof. So they're faced with an unintended consequence because often, as I mentioned earlier, the paucity of knowledge, where even in our sexual reproductive health and rights programs, where we have both girls and boys in groups engaging in robust dialogue. If we look, and Mo alluded to the gendered norms, values, and stereotypes, where in the dialogues the boys have expressed and articulated that when a girl declines any sexual advance, in actual fact, what she's saying is that she wants to be pursued, and that's the messaging that they continue with. And I think, of course, to dispel, debunk these myths and misconceptions, and these are the challenges that we are faced with. So with statutory rape, because of the fear and intimidation and coercion, a lot of the reports are not coming to the attention of the authorities. But even in cases where families are aware of the adults, there's family compensation, monetary compensation, and therefore these cases are not reported. So I just wanted to bring this into a full landscape view of what we are challenged with.
I'm thinking about Shahida, what you mentioned around the I think you said it's 5 C's, right, that contribute sometimes when transactional sex is involved. And we've seen some incidents recently where people will post videos on social media showing young girls who are bragging about what they have been bought. I've been bought a cell phone, I've been given this, I've been given that. And even how we look at that as society, we still tend to blame the young girl involved in it and say, well, this child is the one that is greedy, who likes things, who is not being childlike. And yet there's often an older man who has access to the resources and who is using that as a way of enticing this young child into and grooming them into a particular lifestyle.
Indeed, I think you've hit the nail on the head. If we look at the advertising industry and the messaging around that, and in how children subscribe to that, where they feel that they are missing out if they do not have those consumable items, material stuff. And of course, we find perpetrators, your pedophiles, your sexual predators, who are actually looking out for these vulnerable children and preying on their vulnerable needs. Unfortunately, unbeknown to the victim, that they are subscribing and falling prey into this trap, will obviously give in and allow themselves to be victimized, not realizing the dangers of the unintended consequence. And what we have even found furthermore is that if these young girls, request to have protected sex, that is declined, that is not on the table for negotiation. And unfortunately, and the girls are, hoodwinked, and they again concede to this and find themselves afterwards in a situation which they certainly were not prepared for and are totally shattered from that experience.
Mel, anything you want to add before I bring in our listeners?
I think the one thing I will add is just to say that, these perpetrators are not monsters that are unknown to us and are unknown to these girls. We often find these perpetrators are people that are in spaces where children are. They seek to be close to children, and they are often the trusted person that creates a safe space for the child. It's a coach, it's a teacher, it's a friend, it's an uncle, it's a father, it's someone in a home. It's someone that's trusted, that a child trusts particularly, and there's a whole kind of, process that happens in building that trust between a child and a person, and an adult, before some inappropriate behavior happens, and it's termed grooming. And I think there's so much that we can look out for as adults to pick up when those signs and symptoms are occurring of, when a child might be in a process of being groomed into an inappropriate sexual relationship. And I think that is incredibly important, particularly because most of our children are very vulnerable because of the circumstances that they live in. And these predators use that as an opportunity to build trust, to gain access to kids, and to create spaces where they might feel, oh, there's a safe space for me, there's a soft space for me in this context that I have. But in actual fact, it's there for the purpose of exploitation. And so I think that is incredibly important for us to remember. Many years ago when I practiced as a social worker and I was doing therapy with children that had been sexually abused, 80% of my cases were perpetrators that were known to children. It was very rare that we had instances where it was someone that was a stranger or it was a once-off, incident. Most of the time, it is people that have access to children. And so it's important for adults to really be vigilant and to really intervene early on when we are finding there's a gut feeling, there's something just not right about this. This person seems a little bit too friendly, too charming, doing too much for this child. It's important for us to investigate and to ask the right questions before these children are then, exposed to sexual violence.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. Tandoluhle Vilakazi, you're in Gauteng. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yes, you want to talk about the work that you're doing in the Eastern Cape, in as far as it relates to young mothers.
Yes. So I basically I got connected to young mothers in Eastern Cape through an acquaintance called Rolina. She does what is this? There's a program called Flourish that was around young mothers in Gauteng. So we actually met through Mamandla. Mamandla is a fellowship that aims to bring together activists for motherhood. So we met there, and I just decided to go and work in the Eastern Cape for a while. Because I was a young mother. I wasn't that young, but I had a child at 20. So I always wanted mothers to also have the support that I got for my family and for my community. So I decided that I wanted to just go to Eastern Cape and just informally just work with mothers one-on-one. So what I do, usually majority of the time, what I do is I take on them one-on-one because I'm just a person. I'm just starting out. I am brand new, basically. And what I do is basically just help them out. If they need help with regards to babysitting, I will help them out with that while they are studying and trying to get back on track with their schoolwork. Sometimes I meet others who actually manage to finish school, but they feel they won't be able to go to tertiary or further their studies. So I just give them relay the information, because I realize a lot of them don't have information, and the lack of information makes them think that they don't have options, that basically they just need to not even further studies or actually have or even pursue their dreams if they had before they had the child. So what I do is I just relay the information with regards to the options that they have. But I face a lot of challenges in regards to that, because obviously in South Africa we still have tertiaries and institutions that require you to pay certain fees in order for you to get on the database and stuff like that. But that's the one thing that I would definitely love, like financial assistance with that, with helping them out when it comes to applying and then probably getting into learnerships that will end up help them get jobs in a certain company. What else? So yeah, that's what I do, and I also have access to a holistic network for Mamandla. We have lawyers, we have doctors, we have counselors. So I just I connect them with them if they need any help that I myself won't be able to give to them personally, so that they have a holistic support structure that is given to them.
Okay, well, it sounds like a great initiative, Thanduluhle, that you
so
have
much.
started up for young women in the Eastern Cape. The reality is that teen mothers need as much support as possible. Mastermind, you are in Mpumalanga. Good morning.
Good morning, Sis Cathy, and good morning, your guests and your listeners as well.
Yes.
Yes, I understand that this number of the teenager pregnancy is very huge. And I just want to clarify, you can clarify us more about this number is only one race, black or including all. Because yes, in the blacks, I see most of the teenagers get pregnant by the... Firstly, I want to ask to see the motivation of this thing, because most of them, you see, they get into themselves finding in a peer pressure at schools sometimes, and then they have disadvantages from the background at home. You see, now they end up falling in something that they don't have to found. Now they need to find it, and they end up falling in the hands of any people that they can just find that sometimes at schools you find his friends getting food, cell phones, as your guest one has mentioned, all that. And then at last you see this child, is not only they getting a pregnancy in the boys or men of South Africa. Now there are many people here in the country, and some of them, they've got money, they've got businesses, they've got tuck shops. You see, when this child, they are coming out of schools, they are busy hanging around from that shops. Most here now in South Africa, we have foreign tuck shops in our locations. You see, all those things, you find then the pregnancy of the teenagers doesn't come only here. We must beyond looking, where does it come from? And for me, we have to, as a parent, a child when he's going to school, you see a child when he's serious going to school, how he's wearing. I don't think a parent can buy a short mini skirt for a child to go to school. That school is going to need education. That school is desire for a future. Now, if you're coming at home and you see your child is going to school like this, the wearing they wear nowadays, we understand that they are still young, but the future is judge you now, your future. How are you behaving yourself?
Okay. All right.
Now. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mastermind, thanks for that contribution. Butana, you're out in Rosebank. Good morning.
Hi, Cathy and your guest. It's so disappointing. This crime is encouraged by government, Cathy. The government is reluctant to act against people that rape children. Those are children. About 4,000 in Eastern Cape, not a single person has been prosecuted. Why? And these child, they end up in facilities of government, in hospitals, in clinics. And you said that the premier, they're casual. They're casual in terms of talking about this or making sure that the perpetrators are prosecuted. It's disheartening. Those are children, kids, from 10 to 13. They're not teenagers.
Yeah.
They're not teenagers.
Butana, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. Let's leave it there for this morning. And perhaps it also goes to the heart of our failure to deal with gender-based violence as a society more holistically. I want to bring in just 2 more WhatsApp voice notes, and then I'll get a response from our guest this morning.
Morning, Sis Cathy. It's Chase in Mpumalanga. And on this matter of teenage pregnancy, I think parents should play a huge role on this one, because I think most of the parents are way too strict, and the kids end up afraid of their parents. They don't even talk with their parents. They don't even vent to their parents about how life is becoming, and then the parents keep on saying, we were raised in this kind of manner, and then they don't get to adapt that things have learned, they have changed, the technology has changed. They should just find something just to raise these children, and then find a new way to raise these children, and stop telling these children about in their past, hey, we used to do like this. No, they don't have any idea about the past. I think they should like try to find a new way to teach these children. Thank you.
Morning, Sister Cathy and your guest there in studio. You're speaking to the warrior in Johannesburg. Mina, Sister Cathy, according to me, I think if we the government can take back everything about the kids back to their parents. Remember, in the 80s, 60s, and the early 90s, there were no child right, children's right, and children that what. But children attended school, we had professors, and children didn't get this much pregnant. I'm telling you, Sister Kate, izinto kumele zibuyele kubazali. Ugovernment kumele ayekele abazali bekhulisa abantwana babo, because our government is too much interfering with with the way we are raising our children actually. Yabo.
Okay, so it's quite a mouthful then from our listeners in terms of their contribution to this conversation. James in Limpopo says, I have heard a very young male boast that he's now a man because he's fathered 3 different children with 3 different mothers. Our society should implement consequences for these young men who don't take responsibility for their reckless actions. That's one message there. And another message says the crisis over immense child pregnancies cannot be the Republicans' responsibility alone. Government is the scapegoat over the matter of lack of education that is provided to the people at large. There are no birth control mechanisms in place. All right. So Mel, let me come to you and perhaps give you an opportunity to respond first to what our listeners have raised around just the different thoughts that have been shared on dealing with teenage pregnancies.
Absolutely. I think the first thing I want to say that it is critically important to distinguish between teenage pregnancy and child pregnancy. And I think that those are distinctly different, even in how the law manages them. I think even in terms of, teenagers' age of consent for sexual interaction, and then also then the consequences and the distinct issues around, male perpetrators of child pregnancies, whether those be children who are engaging in sex and unprotected sex at a very early age, or whether it be adult males who are raping essentially young children, and this then consequently turning into pregnancies. I think these are 2 issues that are separate but are interlinked in some way. And I think that it's really important for us to have that distinction so that perhaps we can have a different kind of outcry. Not that, 150,000 girls are pregnant, but that, that there are these young children that are bearing children, and that we should all be outraged and ashamed as a country that this is the case. The second thing I want to say is that we have wonderful legislation in our country. In fact, our school policy around pregnancy and parenting learners has come a very long way. It is incredibly supportive of young mothers. It's supposed to be practiced in a way that allows young people to return to school, get re-engaged into school. But, pieces of paper and legislation are brought to life by the practices and the principles of the people in those spaces. And I think that it is critically important for us as adults who are working with children to take the responsibility of understanding what it is that is necessary in this time, in this context, in our country, for us to start working on building stronger relationships with young people that are sitting in front of us in our classrooms, that are within our homes, that are coming to our programs after school, or, that are involved in our sports, all of those kinds of things. Who are these young people that are sitting across from us, and how are we meant to have these conversations with them? And I think that we need to be brave enough as adults to say we don't know everything. And we need to start trying to have more of these very candid conversations with ourselves to become comfortable to talk about sex, to talk about sexual interaction, to talk about the different types of ways in which sexual relationships are happening within our country, so that we can then be more informed in how we actually have these conversations with our young people. I know that our young people want to have the conversation. They want to be in school, and they want to take care of themselves and their bodies. And so we need to give them the best opportunity to do that.
All right. Thanks for that contribution. Shahida, very briefly then to you.
Thank you, Cathy. So Mo has said a mouthful. I'm just going to add to what she said. I think we need to understand that sexuality education needs to be inclusive and extensive. So bringing it onto different levels where everybody's given an opportunity to be sensitized, to be informed on how to engage and communicate with our children. Furthermore, what I think is most important is including children's voices in the sexual reproductive health and rights design, where we need to hear from them. What would help them? What would make things better? Hearing from the survivors themselves, what can help other children in the future? And I think that is our cue moving forward to ensure that we are taking into account the voices of our children. But in addition to that, it's important, which you alluded to, Cathy, about including the boy child. Where does the boy and the adult male fit into all of this? If we look at gender-based violence and the roles and responsibilities, and breaking down those stereotypes and dispelling, debunking the myths and misconceptions around rights and responsibilities, but championing the fight against sexual violence. Thank you.
Let me thank you both for your time in this conversation this morning, and of course all of the contribution from our listeners. It's time for your latest news update.
In our top stories, Cholota's bail application postponed to tomorrow and 3 people killed in Mpumalanga road crash. Good morning. The Bloemfontein Magistrates Court in the Free State has postponed to tomorrow the case of the former personal assistant of the former Free State Premier Ace Magashule. 37-year-old Murwadi Cholota made a first court appearance this morning following her extradition from the US on Thursday last week. Cholota is facing charges of fraud, corruption and money laundering along with Magashule and others. The charges are linked to the Free State asbestos roof removal tender scandal. 3 people have been killed and 20 others injured in a 3-vehicle pileup outside Mbombela, Mpumalanga. The vehicles include a scholar vehicle, a truck and a bus. The crash happened between Karino and Kamaguku Road this morning. The injured have been taken to hospital. The affected stretch of the road is closed and motorists have been advised to use alternative routes. The former Gauteng Special Investigating Unit head, Sfiso Kunene, has started to serve his jail term. This after the Durban Specialized Commercial Crimes Court sentenced him to 6 years imprisonment, 2 of which were suspended for 5 years. 54-year-old Kunene's conviction relates to the theft of trust funds amounting to around 170,000 rand. The KwaZulu-Natal National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson, Natasha Ramkison Kara.
The accused was a Sifiso Kunene, and he was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment, 2 of which were wholly suspended for a period of 5 years. And this was on condition that he was not convicted of theft. Should I say he's not convicted of theft during the period of suspension. The former head of the SIU in Gauteng. And basically what happened there, prior to his appointment as SIU head, he was an attorney, and there was a payment from the road accident fund of about 226,000 rand, which was made directly into his trust account. And this was for a complainant whose fiancé had passed away in a motor vehicle accident.
The South African Weather Service has issued a warning for high fire danger in some parts of the country, including the northwest this week. This comes following a devastating wildfire around Parys in the Free State, as well as a number of areas in the northwest. One person died and another sustained serious burn wounds while fighting the flames between Parys. Forecaster Lihlohonolo Tobela.
With these cold fronts having to move over the central and the eastern parts of the country, we see some pressure gradient change in terms of the pressure along the central and the northeastern parts, resulting in the wind strength increasing in terms of how the wind is blowing. The danger to this is that we're still expecting a high fire danger warning over the central and the southwestern parts of the country for tomorrow, as well as on the 14th, where it leads over to the extreme northeastern parts of the country. For the next coming 2 days, strong winds are still yet to be expected, especially over the northeastern parts, including the Northern Cape province. Some stretch to the northwest.
And finally, the French President Emmanuel Macron says developed nations should stop lecturing emerging economies about the climate transition. He says countries severely affected by climate change should be allowed to forge their own path to a clean energy future. Macron has also commended President Cyril Ramaphosa for the role he has played in addressing the issue of climate change. In an interview with SABC News, Macron said just energy transition will help South Africa move to clean energy.
With South Africa, we built this one JETP, so a program of transition, to reduce coal plants and CO2 emission, to deploy nuclear and renewables in your strategy, and with some financial requests. And we signed with President Ramaphosa, with Chancellor Scholz, myself, European Commission, President Biden, World Bank, IMF, but we signed a common text saying, and we put 1 billion in this program for South Africa.
Recapping the top story, the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court in the Free State has postponed to tomorrow the case of the former personal assistant to the former Free State Premier, Ace Magashule. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
From 1936 to the future, from Ekaya, Ekasi, to Jozi and Urkan to the world, from dance and poetry to stages filled with our hopes and dreams, from SABC radio stations to cross-border triumphs, from drama, comedy and heart-pounding sport to raise our flag, from culture and spirit to the streets where talent is grown, from generation to generations and the shows that kept us entertained. So, what are you waiting for? Kumbule Kaya. SABC has always been home to our joy, stories, and Msantsi's magic. Come home to SABC Plus, still home to the best of who we are.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
The Olympic medalist, Tatiana Smith, representing South Africa.
Tears of joy will certainly flow for Tatiana Smith.
Silver.
I think this one is much different than any of my races. I'm so fortunate to get a medal.
For the love of the game.
SAFM is celebrating its 88th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with you, our loyal listener. We will be giving away 8,800 to 10 lucky listeners during the month of August. To stand a chance of winning, stay tuned to SAFM and SMS the keyword SAFM88 followed by your name to 41391 and listen to the station throughout the day where you could be selected as a winner. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You know, it's very sad what's happening with these girls. Do you know that here in Kimberley, in the Northern Cape, if you drive around, it's around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, especially on weekends, you will see small young girls, Katie, young girls roaming the streets, walking around, drinking alcohol. And then when you ask, where are the parents? Where are the parents, Katie, of these girls? Because there are people here who are predating on these girls.
Hello, Sis Cathy and all SAFM listeners. Well, the reason and the motivation behind the high pregnancy rate in the country is due to economic reasons. And here in this instance, we find out that most of the teenagers got pregnant because they want to have these things that their other friends possess. So the blame should squarely go to the government by not creating enough jobs to the parents of these children who always get pregnant at the early stage, because they need these things and their parents cannot afford to buy these things that they see from their friends. This is a pure peer pressure that is creating this whole problem in this country. This is Andile from Stegspruit in the Eastern Cape, near the Lesotho borders.
Sister Cathy, how are you? I just want to put my own thinking on the topic that you are discussing. Firstly, I would like to put all the blame, especially on the parents. Because the parents are the ones who are supposed to know where the children are.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. Such high birth rates in South Africa. Is it any wonder that we have high unemployment rates in this country? Because where are the jobs going to come from for all of these people that are being born? On top of that, you have an economy that has remained static, that isn't growing. And what is this government going to do about it? Thanks. Lionel Woodbank.
All right, you're listening to The Talking Point. Yeah, thanks for that feedback in terms of the conversation on teenage pregnancies. I think that it is an issue that we will continue to have conversations about, because the awareness, I believe, needs to come from not only the teenagers who need to be educated, the children who need to be educated, but also the parents who need to be educated on alternative approaches when having these conversations with their children. Because even if a child is being abused, they have to feel safe enough with their parent to come forward and say what has happened. And if children are not doing that, it means that we're not creating a safe enough space and environment for them to feel that they can do that. The final conversation that we'll have this morning then will be to focus on us as a country. If we take into account the last month, of course, we've had the Olympics taking place, and great news for Team South Africa, right? We've been able to double our medal scoreboard from what it was at Tokyo, 6 Olympic medals coming back home. But on the other hand, we also, and I think that also just on the issue of the Olympics, it showed the way in which, as South Africans, we can celebrate, we can come together. I mean, the relay team on Saturday just made us so proud. And of course, there'll be many that talk about Akine Simbani, who managed to finally get his hands on an Olympic medal. So there's a lot for us to be proud of. But on the other end, of course, we have been divided as a nation. Some will say, no, Cathy, it's not the country that is divided, it's just people in the public space that are divided. But actually, all South Africans are clear on the issue around the Miss SA contestants, Chidima Adetsina. And that, of course, has shown a different side of our country, right? What we look at and define as South African, who we look at and define as South African. What should these individuals be able to do? What shouldn't they be able to do? And it goes back again to the issue of racism that keeps coming up in the country. So how do we change our focus? How do we try and work on building a unified South Africa? Well, joining me on the show today for this conversation is Reverend Joseph Tsawani. He's the author of The Rainbow Nation, the vision of the beloved South African community. Reverend Tsawani, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, my sister Cathy. How are you doing, my sister?
I'm well, thank you. And Sidi Sitai is the MD of Mutla Communications, also a developmental communications expert. Sidi, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners, and thank you for having me.
Reverend, South Africa has always prided itself on being an inclusive and diverse society. Of course, 30 years after our country's democracy, this idea of a rainbow nation is one that has been called into serious question, because you'll have South Africans who will say, well, actually, I don't want to live in a rainbow nation. A rainbow nation does not reflect South Africa. Those were Mandela and Tutu's ideas. They must stay with their rainbow nation. We want something different because the rainbow nation has not worked for us. Are we still, in your view, a country that embraces inclusivity, that embraces diversity? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of non-nationals, migrants that are in the country, when we think about diversity more holistically, I'm talking about the cultures that are represented in this country, different languages, different races of people represented in this country.
Hello. Do you want me to start commenting on this?
Yes, please, Rev.
Yeah. Thank you, Sis Cathy. We are the Rainbow Nation metaphor is a given to all of us. We cannot deny this. We are what we are, part of our history. We cannot deny the fact that we have different kind of nationalities within South Africa. Perhaps what we need to do is to really begin to dig deeper and provide the leadership that needs to be provided and begin to frame the issue and the challenges that we have as South Africans. I'm reminded of the fact that when our former president, Nelson Mandela, was freed from prison, he encouraged young people to go back to school. He said that if we don't go back to school, other African young people, scholars will come and politicians will come and run our country. And this is exactly what is happening. We are a blessed nation, Cathy. God has given us all that we need to begin to become a powerful nation, as you alluded earlier on. But what we are lacking is leadership that work very hard to bring our people together. And I'm also reminded by the fact that when I was a director of the youth within the South African Council of Churches, we used to go out and meet with the leadership outside the country. And I remember Leki saying to me, we need to expose our young people to the rest of Africa so that when we get our freedom, we can relate very well with the rest of Africa. And the challenges that we are having today is because we were not really exposed to the continent and the whole world. That's what our apartheid government wanted us to do. They wanted us to stay and be blocked into our own boxes and cocoons. Just permit me to allow me to break down this thing. People who have been oppressed for too long suffer from main four things. There are others, but the first thing is identity crisis. Number two, how do we relate to each other? Like South Africa. 3, how do we relate to the outside world? 4th, how do we deal with our heritage? 5th, we are blessed. We have everything. The reason why people are coming to our country is because we have inherited a very good foundation that we need to provide leadership to make sure that we maintain it. And even allow other African people to come and join us and make sure, but legally, not just coming in here illegally. And the people that we have as leaders today, we need to make sure that our political leadership are helping us, the civic society are helping us, and we also apply the values and principles of Ubuntu. And I'm so happy that the way we dealt with the issue, Yalumtuana, what is her name, by the way? It's
Chidima.
Chidima. We didn't apply the value, the Ubuntu value principles of Ubuntu to be a group solidarity, to be compassionate, to be respectful, to provide human dignity, and collective unity, tolerance, conformity, and sharing. This is the problem that we are facing. This is my introduction. This is how I respond to you, Cathy. But the Rainbow Nation is a given. We cannot change all the white people who are here. We cannot change the Indians who are here. We need to work, provide leadership, and govern them. Even the white people who are here, we need to govern them. Look at what they are doing now. The white people are beginning to govern us, telling us what is wrong and right. That's terrible wrong.
So then, Reverend, you believe that we have an identity crisis as a country. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying this because the Chidima issue really indicates the problem that we have in South Africa. It, by the way, is just a symptom. It tells us there are deeper issues that we have not dealt with within as a nation when we got our freedom. I also want to, with due respect, to blame our leadership that they didn't provide us the leadership that we needed to make sure that our people are comfortable with the freedom that they have and they begin to enjoy it. But we have very few people who are enjoying this freedom.
Okay.
That's why we base that.
Okay. Tsidi, let me bring you in here. Perhaps you can give us your own take on what it is that we can be doing to build a more unified society.
Thanks, Cathy. I think the Reverend is spot on the issue of us as South Africans being oppressed for too long. The issue is multi-layered that you are dealing with, but the Chidima matter brought it to the fore. We come from a very, terrible history of apartheid, and we tend to underestimate the consequences of this apartheid system on us as a black people. It has made us to self-hate. At some point in the 80s in this country, we had a political problem of black on black violence. The consequences of apartheid has divided us and ruled us for too long and make us to believe that there are better blacks than other blacks, and made us to believe as South Africans that we are better blacks in South Africa than blacks in the continent as a whole. And we need to deal with it. I mean, the issue of Chadima, in my view, is more an Afrophobia issue, not a xenophobic issue. We are very intolerant of people of African descent who are melanated beings, because similar immigrants of other nationalities, especially white, are not exposed to the kind of criticism and the kind of interrogation that our fellow African brothers experience too, who are melanated in color. So we really need to dig deep into the issue of decolonizing our minds as African children. And Tate Motha left us a wealth of body of work, and referring to his prominent book, Indaba My Children. We really need to go back and find ourselves as to who are we as a black nation.
How do we do that, Tsidi, in the midst of the challenges that we're facing as a country, right? Because what I don't want to do is create an impression that South Africans were wrong to ask the kind of questions that they did around how Chidima Adetshina ended up becoming a contestant for competition like Miss South Africa. Because if it wasn't for those questions, we wouldn't have uncovered what the Home Affairs Department has alluded to, which is that there could well have been fraud when it came to her own parents' registration and formalization in the country. And that, of course, is indicative of a much bigger problem that we're facing as a country.
Look, I'm appreciative of the fact that we are married with problems with our Department of Home Affairs, endowed with, corruption that is endemic in the department and in our systems in government. But how we react to how this matter was treated with in the public domain, for me, it said a lot, because psychologically it talked to our psyche as a society in terms of our tolerance for one another as melanated beings in this country, in the continent. And there are a lot of things that needs to be dealt with. So let's separate the issues. There's an issue of legality in terms of coming into the country, but there are issues that are layered in that, how we perceive non-South Africans who are melanated. We see them as threats because there is an issue of economic challenge in the country, where opportunities to self-sustain are very limited because our economy is not doing well, and we automatically see them as a challenge to scramble of economic opportunities in the country. But we don't do that to our white folk who are foreigners or who are immigrants in this country. So we really need to have a mind shift. And then, there's a talk of a national dialogue. Maybe this conversation of what qualifies us to be Africans needs to be dealt with thoroughly and be broken down, in different forms. I mean, I'll give an example. Spiritually, as Black people, we have an African New Year that is celebrated on the 23rd of September in the global South, or in the Southern Hemisphere. And as Black people, we don't celebrate that. We are still celebrating our New Year on the 1st of January of each year. But yet our African calendar depicts to us in terms of who we are and what we need to celebrate at what interval. And as a result, we get lost as an African society and as African children. You look at the Chinese, globally, wherever they are, when it comes to celebrating the Chinese New Year, we all celebrate Chinese New Year, and all the other nationalities, they celebrate their cultures, their heritage. But for us, because apartheid has made us to believe and see ourselves as inferior, we don't celebrate that is African and who we are as Africans. So we need to have a deeper conversation as a country insofar as our Africanness.
All right. Reverend, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I add to that by saying that the other aspect that we missed is that when we got our freedom, we didn't do the debriefing. Debriefing, I mean that we need to begin to look at exactly what you are saying, that we need to have as a nation, and begin to introspect and deal with the issue of who we are as a nation. Secondly, to those much is given, much is expected. The reason why we are flooded with our African brothers here is because South Africa it's a powerful, orderly nation, and it has all what it has to begin to provide to our brothers. But we need to do that in order. I'm reminded of the building that was brought down by fire in Johannesburg. You look at this beautiful city that we had, Johannesburg. Some and sisters who come from other parts of Africa. The reason why they are here is because of who we are. I'm sorry to use this example that many African brothers and sisters see South Africa as the America of Africa. They come here and they are looking for hope and future in South Africa. But what we need, with all those gifts that we have, we need to provide the leadership. Make sure that whoever comes into the country come here legally, and they are brought in here so that they can make South Africa great again. The reason why we are in where we are is because things have gone wrong. In the book, things have fallen apart. In the book of Chine Achebe.
Okay.
And for us to begin to be organized, we need to really have a good leadership. The other thing that I want to add.
All right,
is that
Reverend,
Reverend,
I'm going to give you a chance to do that in a moment. We will continue this conversation after the latest news headlines.
Good morning, I am Udzile Saku with your headlines at 11:30. The former personal assistant of the former Free State Premier Ace Magashule will be back in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court tomorrow. 37-year-old Moradi Cholota made her first court appearance this morning and the matter was postponed. The Freedom Front Plus has blamed the DA for the collapse of their long-term agreement in some municipalities in the Western Cape. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government has made impressive strides in advancing gender equality in the last 30 years. He made the remarks in his weekly newsletter in which he reflected on the August the 9th, 1956 Women's March. Details at 12 o'clock.
#SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. We are looking at how to unify South Africa, how to bring our country together, moving beyond the event from event basis or trigger to trigger basis, but really doing, I suppose, deeper, more meaningful work within ourselves as a society, and helping us foster and build those kind of relationships that can build a more unified country. On the line, Reverend Joseph Tsawane is author of The Rainbow Nation, The Vision of the Beloved South African Community, and CD Sitai, MD, Mutla Communications and she's a developmental communications expert. So, Rev, we've got a number of callers that already want to contribute to this conversation. Before I bring them on, let me give you a chance to give one of the other contributions you wanted to make to this conversation.
Yeah, my sister, I wanted to say one point. I'm going back to Chidima. It's a bridge underwater. The water under the bridge. The issue of Chidima. But what we need to provide her with the service is to make sure that we cancel her. I wonder what is going on through in her mind after she withdrew and all what was said in the social media. I think this is our young, beautiful a woman that will need proper counseling and make sure that she feels very much at home, because besides the fact that she might be Nigerian, what you call her, but she will need a counseling because she's a human being. That's why I said we didn't apply those principles of Ubuntu to her, and she will need that kind of counseling. That's all I can say for now.
Do you think that we can say that it's truly water under the bridge? Because yes, it has been dealt with in the context of the competition that she was in. But if we look at the country that South Africa is today, there could well be many other young people who are going to find themselves, and who probably find themselves in a situation such as Chidima Adetshina does. They don't know what their parents have done to secure their stay in South Africa. And so how are we as a country going to deal with some of these issues going forward? Because when all is said and done, you do have a 23-year-old that was born in this country, and all that they know is South Africa.
And this is our challenge. This is our challenge. That's what my sister was saying exactly, that we need to have that what do they call it? They call it that we need to have a gathering of all of us where we can begin to look at ourselves, introspect. I'll call it a gathering of all of us, so that we can begin to have that introspection. I think the government is aware of that. They said something about that. And that's where we need to, all of us, begin to continue, make a contribution. We shouldn't only look at our politicians to decide for us.
Okay.
We need to have a contribution, make a contribution to that. And especially churches. Churches will not be quiet on this issue, Mama. We have to play a spiritual role, because the way to bring the community in together, we will need all the dimensions, psychological, spiritual, political, and it's a multifaceted approach that we need to apply so that we can really make a beloved community in South Africa. Thank you, Mrs.
Thabo, you're calling us from Vanderbijl Park. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy and guest. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I get so disappointed by South Africans who always talk down on us as if we do not like our African sisters and brothers. We like them very much. And there should never be a comparison to say we accept more of white foreigners than black foreigners. Where I stay in the township, I don't have a white foreigner in my street opening an illegal without papers. We are talking to the immediate issues that are facing us in the townships where we stay. These other foreigners that they talk about that are white, we don't see what they do. They don't affect our life negatively the way that we see it every day. I work with a lot of migrants. I travel throughout Africa. I'm telling you, if you go to Namibia, you'll only be told as a South African, if you set up a business there, we have 1 year. After that 1 year, you must have trained a Namibian. Then as a South African, you must return to your country and only hold a directorship in that country. Irrespective, you cannot work there for 5 years, they tell you. And they will tell you that a management position
from this one to that one is only designated for these nationalities. The same happens in Zambia. The same happens in Ghana. When we do it, we are labeled Afrophobia, like your guest sister is saying there. I have a lot of friends that I can mention by name in Africa. I cut my hair in town where I stay by a Congolese. He and I will sit for an hour, we talk, we laugh about everything else. There is no hate, but we hate it when they come here and they treat us, they talk down on us like they do on social media. They sell drugs. They dilapidate our towns like we've seen in Johannesburg and in Panabel where I stay right now. And then, because we want to be an Pan-African country, we must accept that. When we speak against it, we are Afrophobia, we are xenophobia. I'm telling you now, Chidima is aware of the crime that her mother committed. Chidima is it's a student's law today. She cannot be that naive that after 23 years she doesn't know how she acquired a citizenship in this country. She kept quiet about it, hoping that it will not be revealed and that she benefited. Your guests there are talking nothing about a South African mother, where she's at, who she is, that her identity was stolen. Nobody cares about it. They don't speak strong about it, but they speak strong about everything that we stand for. We don't have a problem when they come here, they study legally, they do everything legally.
Okay.
I leave this country, I'm going to Namibia next week. I'm sorting out my papers now. I can't enter that country illegally.
Okay. Thabo, thanks for that contribution. Look, I hear how strongly you feel about your views, but of course we can't say that she knew. We don't know that she knew. The department, the investigation that the Department of Home Affairs is conducting is the one that will ultimately tell us whether or not she knew. But it was the department itself that said that at this stage there could be no action taken against her because she was an infant at the time. Hassan Logart, good morning to you. Thanks for calling in. You want to contribute to this conversation?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you very much. I called another radio station last week and I asked for a more compassionate debate. And I'm glad that you are having it because I felt a bit under attack when I raised the issue for just asking for a more compassionate debate. I mean, for me, the issue, as has been pointed out, shows that there's a lack of historical understanding of how we got where we are. And also there's lack of teaching of history as well as our own racial struggle against racial discrimination and apartheid capitalism, So all that doesn't happen. So when you find the schools break up where other South Africans attack people who are darker than them, all those kind of discussions means that there's no deep conversation about who we are and our place in the continent. And I think that your guests are raising an important issue, and I think the station is doing a good job. Let me just also advise, I think it was 2008 when a number of foreign nationals were killed in Alex and various places. A large number of them were killed because they were darker. They were presumed to be different. So we can open this conversation out, as you say, who's a South African, who's an African, How many Tswana-speaking people are here? We are probably more than those who are in Botswana, Sesotho speakers, more than Lesotho. So clearly the sub-region has to be reconfigured. We must think beyond fighting each other.
All right. Thank you for that contribution, Mr. Logart. Let me go to Brian Mabaya. Brian, is this you calling in? I see your text messages all the time. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes.
Firstly, one thing I can say, we are not black, we are not white, we are a spiritual being. My comment is the different in society. When you put a leopard and a lion at a certain land, when there's a lot of prey on them, they won't need to fight, but they will share. The issue with South Africa and foreigners and the world with foreigners is the issue of opportunities, especially in a black society. They are fighting for the same opportunity. Okay, for example, we take the people in Sandton. Let's say you put more French, more Spanish restaurant. When that opportunity becomes scarce, they kill each other, they assassinate each other. It's not just a matter of being black. Sometimes it's that the opportunity are given to people who come from somewhere, while our people don't have the skills. But if we share our skills and understand each other, then we can learn to live together. The other point I want to make on your guest there was a person of faith. Remember what happened to Esau and Jacob is that thing that started the whole thing that we are facing today. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that contribution, Brian. Andres, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Cathy.
Yes.
What I want to say is that, before, when we deal with the issues with the person, let's have humanity before everything, but not shying away addressing the wrongs that has happened. Now, we need to understand this concept of Africa. Let me cite you an example. People like vendors, they came from Central Africa. They came down until they are here. But at that time, our Africa was not colonized because these borders were done by people who colonized Africa. You see, but humanity must prevail, but we've done without shying away from addressing the wrongs. When something is wrong, please, a person is still a human. Let's address it in a human way, but addressing those wrongs that has happened. Okay.
What does that mean, Andres? What is addressing things in a more human way?
Insulting. We must not insult at a person. Let's address the wrong. If this case has done something wrong, let's address the wrong without insulting this Cathy. Let's address this Cathy. This was wrong. You skipped a robot. You skip a traffic light. You skip stop sign. Let's not insult her to say she thinks she's better because she works in the radio. We must say this Cathy has skipped a stop sign and it's wrong. She must get a fine.
Okay. All right. Andres, thanks for that contribution. Babitseng, you're in the Northern Cape. Good morning.
How are you, Sis Cathy?
I'm well, thank you.
No, thanks. Thanks for taking my call. Look, I think as South Africans, we've got a way of, deviating from what is at stake here. I mean, this country has got, it's a constitutional democracy. The law is the law. If there is one who break the law, then we need to pursue it in that context. That here is somebody who stole somebody's identity. And now we are simply taking the thing and diluting the problem and saying that, no, Africanness and one. Let me start off with, when the government of the day came in, they should have dealt with that thing to educate people about Africanness. It can't be when people are struggling on the ground and then we elect people to ensure that they govern this country properly and ensure that the border gates are closed. You allow people when they got the right documentation to enter into a country. And we can't open the country's border gates. Even criminals are coming in. Today we've got all sorts of problems, starting with drugs, coming with corruption. Corruption is manifesting itself into different forms. So we should address this issue as somebody who came into the country and stole somebody's identity. That is what. Now we shouldn't try and diversify this thing into something which is not. I agree with the very same person just up to me with the one that you gave me a chance of doing. I agree with all those ones. It doesn't mean that we don't love our people. We love them. There are lots of them staying amongst us. But we need to address issues that we are faced with. If there is a crime that has been committed, it doesn't matter who is committing that crime. Thank you very much.
All right. Babitseng, out in the Northern Cape, thanks for that contribution. The final call will be from Sekhatli. You're in Mankweng, Sekhatli. Good morning.
Good morning. Cathy, let's just face reality, man. I've realized this thing in this national team matches. Let's say South Africa is playing against any foreign country. You'll see those people, all of them, ganging against South Africa. You can see that those people actually, they don't love us. If it's South Africa playing against Nigeria, yes, of course, in the country, they'll just go and support their national team. But you'll see them against Kenyans, whatever, Ghanaians, all those African countries that their people are here in South Africa. They'll go there and support those clubs to gang against us. So then you can see that, no, these people actually are here, but they don't like us. But otherwise, let's just talk about that Home Affairs. I think the minister now is doing a great job, and then let us forget about this issue of saying not xenophobic. Let them label us with that xenophobic, but the fact remains is let us bring back our country. Otherwise, our country geographically is in South Africa, but otherwise, we don't have any country. Let's just go to those people who are saying we hate them. This October, that podcast, you can see how many drugs that guy is dealing with every day, trying to get drugs from the Nigerians specifically. I don't just want to say what. Nigeria, especially in Hillbrow. So this is things that we're supposed to tolerate. When we ask them, why do you bring drugs in the country? Why are you buying them? When we ask them everything, why are you at the border having... There is another thing, Cathy, that made me angry yesterday when I saw one of the podcasts, that podcast called The Fake Marriage. Our South African women, shame on you. Not all of them. Some South African women, shame on you for selling your country for fake marriage just because you are going to earn only 300 rand while we are taxed to give you 350 so that you cannot starve. This is really a law of those people to sell the country. Imagine if each and every South African woman has peace. But by the time the Bangladesh are in the country.
Okay.
So just the country, not only geographically, we need our country, not only for peace.
Okay, Sekgaki, unfortunately, I'm going to have to come in there because the line to you isn't great. So we're struggling to hear the last bit of what you're making, but I think you've made the point you wanted to make around, what you believe should be a war against illegal foreigners, especially on the part of the Home Affairs Department. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm back with more of the feedback from our guests, especially in response to your calls.
Join us in celebrating 30 years of Casual Day impact in support of persons with disabilities. Our theme is I See You, a powerful call to action to create an inclusive society where everyone is valued and recognized. Support by wearing your Casual Day stickers and support your merchandise on Friday, 6 September. Available from participating NPOs, retailers, government departments, schools, and casualday.co.za. Follow us on social media at Casual Day SA or WhatsApp 076 611 4780. This is an SABC supported initiative.
SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024, celebrates Team SA medalists.
South Africa 26, Australia 19. The bronze medal for South Africa from Paris 2024.
Olympic medal is very, very special, and sometimes you only realize it a year or two afterwards. I'm really grateful for our players that they could call themselves Olympic medalists.
For the love of the game.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. So we've heard really diverse views from those of you that have called in around what you believe the position of South Africans is when it comes to this conversation. And I don't want to downplay the fact that there are people who feel that their concerns are being delegitimized, Tsidi, by how we often have this conversation and how we choose to characterize what is going on.
Look, Cathy, there's no doubt that the issue of economic scramble it's an international phenomenon. And because of this economic scramble, it has given rise to anti-immigrant sentiment globally. I mean, we've seen recently in the UK, the uprisings against immigrants. That says to you that because the economy has shrunk of the UK, there is very little of opportunities for natives in that country. And as a result, they see immigrants in that country as a threat for those towards those opportunities. And there's a rise also internationally of right-wing nationalist parties. In Germany, we've heard about the Alternative for Deutschland party that is also, prophesying for the same anti-immigrant sentiments. We've seen in the US, now that Kamala Harris has now entered the race to become the next president of the United States, there's an issue of questioning her nationality, and is she truly an American in the true sense of the word? So issue of economic scramble, we don't take it lightly. And like the caller said, in the townships, they have lived realities where the old tuck shops in the townships have been closed, owned by South Africans, and reopened by foreign nationals. It's an issue. So Hannah said it's a multi-layered issue. There's an issue of immigration management by Department of Home Affairs. There's an issue of working towards economic development in the country. We need to work towards improving our economy so that there are many job opportunities for all South Africans. We are having a country with the most highest unemployment rate currently. And as a result, it will give birth to anti-immigrant sentiments, Cathy. We need to work at these multi-layered issues that gives rise to what we are going through right now as a country and as a continent.
Unfortunately, we are completely out of time for this conversation today. It is, of course, a conversation that we will continue to have as a country because there's so many things that I think we need to wrestle with, and we mustn't be afraid to work our way through them, because it's in doing that we'll have greater clarity, but that even the concerns that South Africans have can be adequately addressed. That's why we leave it on the talking point for today. The show back with you again between 9 and midday tomorrow.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents the final episode of The Door, an addict's journey, read by Samson Khumalo.
I owe debt of gratitude to you and the team that faithfully worked day and night to get us back on our feet. Don't give up your seat. You did not come here to make friends, but to recover from addiction. I leave from here with hope for my future, hope for my marriage and family, hope for my business, hope to start all over again. I place my faith and confidence in the Almighty God to see me through. I'm sure He is not done with me yet. In one of my readings here, I think I was only a month or so here, I picked up a poem that has become my mantle and mantra. Every day before I went to bed, I would recite it and internalize every sentence as it spoke deeply to me. And I would like to recite and remind you of the nature of the disease we are fighting. My name is cocaine. My name is cocaine, call me Coke for short. I entered this country without a passport. Ever since then, I made lots of scum rich. Some have been murdered and found in a ditch. I'm more valued than diamonds, more treasured than gold. Use me just once, and you too will be sold. I'll make a schoolboy forget his books. I'll make a beauty queen forget her looks. I'll take renowned speaker and make him a bore. I'll take your mother and make her a whore. I'll make a school teacher forget how to teach. I'll make a preacher not want to preach. I'll take your rent money and you will get evicted. I'll murder your babies or they will be born addicted. I'll make you rob, steal, and kill. When you're under my power, you have no will. Remember, my friend, my name is Big C. If you try me one time, you may never be free. I've destroyed actors, politicians, and many a hero. I've decreased bank accounts from millions to zero. I make shooting and stabbing a common affair. Once I take charge, you won't have a prayer. Now that you know me, what will you do? You'll have to decide. It's all up to you. The day you agree to sit in my saddle, the decision is one that no one can straddle. Listen to me, and please listen well. When you ride with cocaine, you are headed for hell. Now, it is possible to recover from this debilitating disease. It is possible to beat this monster, and I hope you keep fighting for yourself and all those who love and support you. Perhaps our paths will never cross again. I stand as a beacon light of hope for those struggling, and I pray that I will keep what I have by giving it away. Once I learn to surrender and open up, my recovery could truly begin. It's been a long journey, rebuilding relationships, making amends for all the damage I caused. Every single day, I thank God for His mercy, His grace, and His belief in me. As for my incredible wife, wow, there are no words that can truly express the deep gratitude I feel towards her for hanging in there, despite having every reason to run for the hills. She is, was, and always will be the love of my life. I've been deeply privileged and so grateful to be part of my children's life. They've grown into amazing human beings and are ready to launch themselves into the world. I know that despite what I put them through, I have, since my final rehab, been a good influence in their lives and given them a living example of what grace and forgiveness can do. Although all the pain I caused and the damage I did will never be forgotten, it will, by the grace of God, never be repeated.
That was the final episode of The Door, an addict's journey, written by Abner Mariri. The book is available on www.abner.africa. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Samson Kumalo, technical production by Nanda Koza.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 12th of August, 2024. Very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM, leading the conversation. I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
I don't want to suggest to the country and those that are affected by load reduction that is going to be an easy solve. It's going to be complicated. Like I said, we're balancing.
Electricity and Energy Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says that the issue of load reduction needs critical focus from government and Eskom. And
when I heard my name, I was just like so overwhelmed with gratitude and joy. It was such a beautiful moment.
Historic moment for South Africa as Mia Leroux has been crowned Miss South Africa 2024, and she happens to be around here. John just got a nice picture with her. And coming up in sport,
I'm going to wrap up the Olympic Games for you. There's also news from the Wallabies and the Proteas.
And that's John Gericke, still with this big smile on his face, coming up in the second half of the show. Please let us know what's on your mind. Share your thoughts with us. 41391, charged at R1.50 per SMS. You can also write to us via X or Facebook, our handle at SABC News_radio, or you can use the hashtag Updated Noon, or send us a WhatsApp voice note on the number 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Monday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, here's the latest news with Utsile Saku.
Thanks, Sakina. Top stories at 12. Moradi Cholota back in court tomorrow, and FF Plus blames the DA for collapsing their agreement in the Western Cape. Good afternoon. The former personal assistant of the former Free State Premier Ace Magashule will be back in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court tomorrow. 37-year-old Moradi Cholota made her first court appearance this morning and the matter was postponed. She was extradited from the US on Thursday last week. Cholota is facing charges of fraud, corruption and money laundering along with Magashule and others. The charges are linked to the asbestos roof removal tender scandal. The Freedom Front Plus has blamed the DA for the collapse of their long-term agreement in some municipalities in the Western Cape. The two parties formed a coalition government in municipalities such as Langeberg, in which no party got an outright majority after the 2021 local government elections. The DA says that the Freedom Front Plus and the ANC are planning to join forces to propose a motion of no confidence in one of its mayors. The Freedom Front Plus Western Cape Deputy Leader, Advocate Gert van Niekerk, has accused the DA of arrogance.
Paragraph 1.1 of the coalition agreement says the coalition shall be called the coalition government or the multi-party coalition, and no single party shall claim ownership of it. All over the show, it is DA-led coalition. That's what you hear. The DA wants a rubber stamp. They don't want a coalition partner. They want somebody who sits in the corner and be quiet, and only when they need you to assist them in pushing the motions through council, then you must raise your hand and support their motions.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government has made impressive strides in advancing gender equality in the last 30 years. He made the remarks in his weekly newsletter in which he reflected on the August the 9th, 1956 Women's March. Ramaphosa says the march has lasting effects as it highlighted the importance of women's economic empowerment. Sibatla Mota reports.
Ramaphosa says that the country still has a long way to go in broadening women's economic participation. He says that the percentage of South African women considered to be self-employed or entrepreneurs stands only at 5%, lagging behind the rest of the continent. Ramaphosa says that the government has, however, set a target to allocate at least 40% of public procurement spend to women-owned businesses. The president adds that women empowerment contributes to thriving economies, spurs productivity, and boost economic growth.
A senior opposition politician in Tanzania, Tundu Lissu, and several of his colleagues have been arrested on the eve of the youth rally that his Chadema party has organized. Police are also reportedly holding a group of young people who'd planned to attend the gathering later today. Those arrested are accused of planning violent demonstrations.